Welcome to Influential Entrepreneurs, bringing you interviews with elite business leaders and experts, sharing tips and strategies for elevating your business to the next level. Here's your host, Mike Saunders.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Influential Entrepreneurs. This is Mike Saunders, the Authority Positioning Coach. Today we have with us Marc Vasquez, who's the co-founder and president of Donumvita, a financial education company. And today we'll be discussing the private reserve system. Marc, welcome back to the program.
Hey, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Hey, you're welcome. I'm excited to talk about this episode and this segment about the private reserve system because I'm not an engineer, but I always follow the process, follow the blueprint. And when I hear the word system, it's like, okay, good. Just tell me where to start, where to go, guide me. And then private reserve, that sounds like a really elite kind of a setup. So give us a definition of what the private reserve system is, and then what led really in your career to bring all of your teachings and learnings together to create this private reserve system.
Absolutely. So as last time we spoke, we were talking about our methodology, which is kind of the mindset on how to amass generational wealth. And that consisted of principles. Well, today we're going to talk about the method to amass generational wealth. And so we've created our own proprietary system. We call it the private reserve system. And in short, it's really our operating system to amass generational wealth. And one caveat or one add-on to that statement is that when we were creating this, developing this, our goal was to really simplify personal finance. There's so much information out there. It's hard to determine or discern between what's real information, what's misinformation. Like, depending on where you go to get your information, there's just contradictory statements everywhere. And so we want this to be like all-inclusive, meaning it's going to cover whatever it is that you do, whatever it is that you need it to do, but clearly and simply identified as an operating system that's tried and true and can be repeated over and over and over again to attain the results that you want.
That's awesome. And, I like your intro to like your methodology, which is your process to make, keep, and grow money. And that really is the progression, isn't it? You need to make it first, and then you want to keep it. You don't want to have money flowing into that proverbial bucket that has holes in it. So you want to keep it as much as possible. Now, there's always going to be leakage with whatever the case is. You got to spend money and you have taxes, but you want to keep as much as you can. And then the last step is to grow it. To make sure that what you're making and keeping is then growing. So I like that progression. And I know that what you just talked about here, this system is going to have principles related to accounting or banking or economics. Well, when you hear that as a consumer, it doesn't matter what level of your education is, you still are going to feel like you've got some holes in your understanding. So talk a little bit about how you are integrating principles of accounting, banking, and finance all into this system so that it's nice and clear. And then we'll get into the specific steps because I love how we went from methodology to how do you do it? What's the method?
Great question, Mike, and you're absolutely correct. And so the way that I interpreted or heard your question is you're kind of asking me, how does the system work? And it really works based off of accounting, banking, economics, and finance. It's truly an integrated financial system. And so just to really quickly and simply go over for accounting, really what accounting is, it's just it's a system to record income, debt, assets, and liabilities. So right off the bat, the private reserve system is a system that records all of those, items. And so that box is ticked. Banking. The definition of banking or the way we define it is it's a way to accept, safeguard, and lend money for a fee. Again, the private reserve system ticks that box. Economics, well, the definition that we use is to produce, consume, and transfer wealth. The private reserve also ticks that box. And then finally, finance, that's to plan and manage cash flow, net worth, and risk. Well, the private reserve happens to tick that box as well. So really, in short, Mike, we believe that the private reserve system is an integrated operating system to amass wealth, and it's based off of just tried and true proven principles.
Yeah, and when you look at that list of accounting and banking, economics and finance, what else would there be, right? I mean, that covers it all. And then I'm certain there's bullet points and bullet points under each one. So I like how it kind of incorporates everything into a cohesive system. What's the first step when you start thinking about, okay, well, what is this method? Where do you start with first?
Yeah, so first we're really taking the principles of accounting, and what we're going to do is step one is create a budget. And really, the purpose for creating a budget is to realize positive cash flow and surplus capital. And unfortunately, in our experience, the word budget, the term budget, has really, for who knows what reason, has really there's like a negative connotation.
Yeah.
Or it's like a negative buzzword around budget, as though you're asking someone to consume less than they produce.
Or to be so restricted that I can't make any move. I can't buy this pack of gum because it's not in my budget, and that's restricting, right? And that's a fallacy.
So it can be. So again, the way we look, our perception or perspective of money is that money doesn't change who you are. It just kind of amplifies who you are. I would say the same thing is true about the word budget. If you're thinking from a point of view of scarcity, then yeah, I could see where that negative connotation comes from. But if you're looking at it from a point of view of abundance or prosperity, then it doesn't resonate with us at all. And in short, a budget is nothing more than a spending plan. I mean, if you look it up, if you look at the word budget in the dictionary, it's really a plan. And it's a plan on how and where to allocate money. It's really that simple.
So budgeting, it reminds me of the example, like when you think of the word diet, and I know you're into fitness and exercise, and if you think of, I've got to go on a diet to gain weight, lose weight, whatever. Well, the first three letters in the word diet is die. Well, and that's facetious, and people kind of chuckle at that, but it's like, you don't really want a diet. You just want a lifestyle eating plan. You want to eat healthy and eat well. Well, in financial terms, you don't really need this constricting budget that restricts every single dime you spend, but you need a spending plan so that you are free to spend money in this area and that area. Because why? You sat down and you put together this operating system so that you have that freedom to do this thing or that thing. Is that a good way to summarize kind of cash flow and having that budget in place?
Yeah, and I'm going to take it a step further. I think where the negative connotation comes in from is the fact that when you're sitting down to create a spending plan, AKA a budget, you're asking yourself to hold yourself accountable for how you've allocated your money. And as we discussed in the previous segment, there's kind of four holes in everyone's financial bucket. And so really, this is an opportunity to find and determine, to analyze, okay, are those holes? Am I paying more taxes than I need to? Am I being affected by inflation? Am I paying my debt as effectively and efficiently as possible? And the retirement plan that I'm saving money in, is it the best place and best strategy for me to be investing in? And so I think it's the idea that I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, but it seems like right now in this period of time that we're living in, that personal accountability is it's people don't like being asked to be accountable for their actions, and I think maybe that's the negative connotation around budgeting is you're just asking yourself to be accountable for how you're spending money.
Yeah, and we could go down a really deep path on that aspect, whether it's personal or finance or fitness or spiritual or all these areas where people could be asked to be accountable and they resist against that. But I think to your point is so great because this budget, maybe you ought to coin a new phrase and call budget some other word other than budget so that people go, oh yeah, but it really is a, lifelong spending permission plan, because it really is, if you want to get here ultimately at the end of your, career and life at this financial position, then that means we need to do certain things, and which means that we need to have a spending plan that looks like this. Call it a budget if you want, call it a spending plan. But yeah, that's the first step, is to realize positive cash flow and what to do with that surplus capital. So what's the next step?
Yeah. So step 2, and these steps are strategically they're in a priority they're in a sequence on purpose. So step 2 is to insure, and insuring is really to provide protection and cash value accumulation. To take it one step beyond, it could be to manage risk. In this case, we are talking about all lines of insurance, but more specifically for step 2, we're really focusing in on implementing life insurance into the system,
and with a focus on accumulating cash the right way.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, we want it. Obviously, there is a death benefit, and that's the component that provides protection. But we're not talking about a term type policy. We're talking about a permanent policy that adds cash value accumulation, and it also taken a step further is providing a dividend paying or the opportunity to earn dividends. So dividend paying life insurance.
Yeah, and I know that we'll get into more detail on that in further talks. But I think that what a lot of people don't realize is when they hear the word insurance, they assume, kind of like back to budget, oh, well, Grandpa told me this. Well, these days, there are some really high-level, really cutting-edge products that do some amazing things with cash value, with tax, deferment and all of that. And so what I would say is someone needs to just tuck that away and go, okay, I'm going to follow the process. I want to hear how to get my budget right, how to increase my cash flow. I'm going to ensure that I'm protected, with that cash flow. And let's just kind of keep that open mind, but don't jump to conclusions, because from what I've seen out there, when someone fully understands this, it really just changes their impression of that asset class.
I couldn't agree with you more. And so I want to, and I believe that we've mentioned this, but I want to just highlight this. Everything that Donumvita, not everything, but I would say Donumvita work, first and foremost, we're contrarian. And we're contrarian not for the sake of being contrarian, but we've realized that we've taken it upon ourselves to do our own research and to figure out what can we do to take control of our financial environment. And so in the most simplified manner, and these are the 5 steps that we believe accomplish that.
And I like your definition of contrarian, because you're not contrarian to be the rogue renegade, to be high risk. It's just that you've researched the industry enough to see where really wise financial moves are. And if that goes against the institutional norms that are out there, then so be it. Call it contrarian or call it just wise financial moves. And I know that we don't want to get into the weeds or name names, but we know that in any sector, financial, mortgages or things like that, that there are, kind of institutional recommendations that come down the pike that people that work for those kind of organizations recommend and kind of you feel forced to take that, but it might not be in your best interest. It's in the best interest of the higher up organization. But when you can work with an independent like yourself, now you're looking at the benefit of the client. And if that recommendation feels different and is contrarian, and call it that, but when you can assess it and go, you know what, really makes sense. Now you're taking ownership of that financial future you want to attain to.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we go through the rest of the steps, Mike, it'll make more sense. And when we get into the next segment of this series, it'll really make sense. But at the end of the day, what we're helping people to do is to take control of their personal finances.
Yeah.
And I know it's hard to see now, but like you said, trust the process and at least keep an open mind enough to hear the rest of the steps.
Yeah.
You'll realize that, oh, wow, like I didn't realize that there are these living benefits in addition to the death benefit that really offer me financial control.
Yes. And I want to have anyone hearing this tuck away that phrase you just said for later and remember that when Marc talks about living benefits, that's a light bulb moment. That's a really big light bulb moment. So now that we have followed your method of the private reserve system to kind of optimize budget, and we've now looked at ensuring and protecting cash value accumulation, what's the next step in the process?
Yeah, so step 3 is really implementing what most people would say would be probably one of the most important principles, and that's paying yourself first. And so we do that by saving the surplus capital that we realized in step 1, and we then save that, and in this case, we save it in a permanent life insurance policy to accumulate capital and accrue uninterrupted compound interest. And I just want to make one kind of make sure that we understand how we're using the term capital. Capital is really just money that makes money, either now or in the future. And so when we talk about accumulating capital, we're talking about creating an opportunity fund so that we can make money with that money when the time is right.
Yeah. And not to get into the weeds, but one question that comes to my mind, in certain vehicles, is there an opportunity to earn both dividends and compound interest? Absolutely.
Yes.
That's unbelievable, really.
It is unbelievable. And there's an opportunity. I'm going to throw in a third caveat, Mike. There's an opportunity to earn dividends, to accrue uninterrupted compound interest, and for liquidity without interrupting the compound interest.
Yeah. Oh, and let's probably throw in this, which again, we're not, making product recommendations at this point, but I'm certain that I can assume that there's a way to structure some of these where there is protection, like a floor. Like, hey, if you want to structure this where you can never lose money, like in some investments, hey, if it goes south, you're losing money. And I'm sure in some of these you can go, you know what? You'll never lose money. You'll earn this dividend. So I think that there's that safety and protection aspect that can be structured all depending on how you guide the process, right?
Absolutely. There's been a change, and I don't want to get too into the weeds right now, but in short, guaranteed to accrue 3% interest compounded.
Yeah. Can't lose money, guarantee, compound. That's just the dream. And when you can look at how these are set up and structured, it makes sense. So I've seen some of these before, the layouts and the plans. Very good.
With liquidity.
Yeah, let's put the cherry on the top on that as well. So good. We've covered budget, insure, and save. What's the next step in the method?
So step 4 is borrow. And so what we're talking about here is everyone borrows money, whether they realize it or not, or whether they want to accept that fact or not. From our perspective, there's really nothing. Borrowing is not a bad thing. And here's the caveat. Our definition of borrowing is to leverage OPM or other people's money to make money with money.
Yeah. So what would an example of that look like?
Can you be more specific, Mike? Exactly what are you asking?
So when you say to leverage other people's money to invest in a productive asset, what would that look like? Would that be go to bank A, borrow money, and buy a piece of rental real estate? Or are there other options to leverage the borrowing of money?
Yeah, so it doesn't really matter. So what our clients soon realize is that we're not telling them or advising them what asset classes to invest in.
Okay.
More importantly, we want to teach them how to invest, or in this case, how to borrow. And so borrowing just naturally occurs in our economy. And so what we're doing is teaching them a better way to borrow. Typically speaking, what we do is we borrow money to purchase a liability. And the way we define a liability is just something that takes money out of our pocket. And so it could be a consumer good, like a new TV, a car, so on and so forth. Rather than borrowing money, once you've kind of built a foundation and your awareness has grown, and now because your awareness has grown, you're able to make better decisions. Because you're making better decisions, you're able to get better results. Ultimately, what we're saying is, if you can access other people's money, let's just say at 3% or 4% interest rates, we're in a really low interest rate environment right now. And so if you can get money at a low interest rate and invest it, you use the example of property, so I'll continue down that path. You can buy a rental property that's cash flowing, and you're able to make, I'm just going to keep things really simple. You're borrowing money at 3%. You're able to earn 5%. Take the spread of 2%, the difference between 3 or 5 minus 3. That leaves you with 2%. Pay back your loan, and then keep the spread.
Yeah.
And then once the loan is fully paid back, now you're earning 5%.
Yeah.
And so a productive asset is something that is not just appreciating in value, which we call capital appreciation, but it's cash flowing.
And to your point, that asset may be real estate, it may be other things, but it all depends on your tolerance, your preference, your interest, and that comes from someone like yourself, Mark, sitting down with that person going, tell me, what do you like? What do you don't like? Where's your risk tolerance? And then you're making recommendations. Like, for instance, me personally, I would never want to do the rental real estate side of things. So you would say, oh, no problem. Let's talk about, and then you'd go down that path. So having a custom plan provided to you through this method, to me, feels very flexible and fluid.
Yeah, absolutely, Mike. And since your audience is predominantly entrepreneurs, just to make this clear, a business is another asset. or asset class. And so maybe you want to grow your revenue. And so rather than taking money out of your banking account, your savings account, you're able to access money that's at a very low interest rate to grow your business. Again, we want people to invest in asset classes that they're very comfortable with and very good with, and they've got some level of expertise, because regardless of how volatile a market may be, if you are educated and informed and have wisdom and knowledge about that particular industry or that market, you're not really investing in the market, you're investing in yourself and your ability to manage and navigate through whatever phase of the economy you're in. And so anyways, to kind of wrap this up, we're talking to a lot of entrepreneurs. Well, entrepreneurship or being a business owner, that is an asset class. A business is an asset. And so for a lot of people out there, it could be a way to grow your business, scale your business. So I just wanted to make that clear.
Yeah, I think that too many people think, like we've said before, the connotation of budget is, or the fear of, of being one way or the other. Well, same with asset class or investing in. It can take on a lot of different forms, and it really depends on what you like and where your passion is. And that's where it gets down to, I had no idea that I could. And that's where someone like Marc comes in to say, let me just give you this to consider. So what's the last step in the method?
Mike, you just touched on something, and I want to clarify something that I haven't stated. And so I just want to make this clear. There's a reason why we're calling this the private reserve system. We're all familiar with the Federal Reserve System. It's our central banking system. And so to your point, we're familiar with different asset classes. Predominantly, we hear about asset classes that are traded on Wall Street, right?
Yeah.
And so why are we hearing more about assets that are trading on Wall Street, for example, equities? Well, we're hearing about that because the central banking system pretty much owns that whole industry, and they've got a huge budget. And so there's a lot of marketing that is advertising, your broker or your broker that is selling you assets traded on Wall Street. And so the point is that this system is created to decentralize finance and to empower people to have control over their own private reserve system and less reliant upon the Federal Reserve System. Yeah. I just wanted to throw that out there and clarify that.
Kind of cutting ties to Wall Street, or at least giving you the option to, yeah.
So step 5 is invest. And so the reason why we invest, or the reason why we should be investing, is to generate cash flow and capital appreciation. So again, we're not here to advise our clients or the marketplace where to invest. Our focus is how to invest.
Yeah. I'm looking, or I'm following along with you here on these 5 steps, and I don't have a graphic or an image in front of me, but it's almost like in my mind's eye, I can see this. So hopefully you either have it or you can create it, because it seems like I can see these arrows. Like when you optimize your budget and you increase cash flow, and then you protect it and insure it, and then you save, and then you borrow to invest in productive assets, and then you generate more cash flow, guess what happens? That arrow goes right back up to the top. That then feeds right back into the budget so that you can save, so that you can invest in productive assets, and then create more cap. And it just build upon and amplify, and really becomes a compounding of this system, compounds upon itself, in one of the elements is compound interest. But am I seeing that the right way there?
Great point, Mike. It's almost like you're creating your own positive feedback loop.
Yeah.
And I'm going to maybe not blow your mind, but it blows my mind. Think of it, and we're going to get into this in the next segment, but I just want to kind of drop this little seed here and see where we go with it. But in step 2, we talked about insuring. Well, let's just say that we're talking about one policy, one contract, one insurance contract that's building cash accumulation. The way I like to look at that as being is like it's one branch of your private reserve system. Well, what happens if you've got multiple insurance contracts that you're overfunding and building cash accumulation? And now you're creating all these branches of your private reserve system. And not only do you have this circular kind of one positive feedback loop, but now you've got multiple positive feedback loops that are creating income to go back into your budget.
Yeah.
To increase your cash flow.
Yeah. So you just cookie cut when you got the formula dialed in, you cookie cutter it and expand, and then maybe one of those pillars kind of you dial it in a different way for a different purpose. But yeah, I really love that word picture, and I think that really says it all. So what would you say is kind of like the final thought, and what's the best way that someone can reach out and go, okay, I want to hear a little bit more about how your method of the private reserve system can maybe apply to my situation?
Yeah, so the best way to find out more about the private reserve system and to have any questions that your audience may have is to go to donumvita.com and click the Get Started button and just follow the process there. It's hopefully at the end of going through our process, questions will be answered. The opportunity to schedule a one-on-one will be available, and your audience will be able to determine if this is right for them or not.
Excellent. Well, Marc, thank you so much for coming on. It was a real pleasure talking with you today and seeing this private reserve system method come to life. So I appreciate your time and look forward to catching you on the next episode.
Absolutely. Thanks, Mike.
You've been listening to Influential Entrepreneurs with Mike Saunders. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.influentialentrepreneursradio.com.